At the moment of death, you rise above your body and you look back at it. You have to keep in mind that in a near-death experience, we're talking about someone who is clinically dead only for a few minutes, so they wouldn't be around to tell what they experienced.
What if the afterlife is a dangerous game, and you've never learned the rules? Hidden in forbidden texts, secrets from the Tibetan and Egyptian books of the dead reveal the exact journey your soul takes, and the one mistake that could trap you in eternity. Are you ready to discover the truth they've kept from you? What happens after you take your final breath changes everything, including how you live right now. Every choice you make mirrors the transitions waiting for you in the afterlife, shaping your destiny in ways you can't ignore. Today, we're uncovering ancient truths that modern science is finally catching up to. Truths that will transform your reality forever. What really happens when we die? This question has followed humans since we first looked up at the stars. From the oldest cave paintings to modern science, we've searched for answers about death and what comes next. I spent 15 years studying death across cultures, talking with people who've had near-death experiences, and looking at what science tells us about the end of life. What I found changed everything I thought I knew. Did you know that people who were legally dead for several minutes report similar experiences across different countries and religions? Or that new research shows our brains might stay active for hours after clinical death? These discoveries are just the start. Some say death is the end, just darkness and nothing more. Others believe we go to heaven, get reborn, or join a greater consciousness. But what does the evidence actually show? In this video, we'll look at death through three lenses: what ancient cultures knew about dying, what modern science has found, and what people who've come back from death tell us. We'll compare notes from Egyptian death guides, written 4,000 years ago, with brain scans taken just last year. You'll hear from doctors who've watched thousands of patients die, spiritual leaders who guide people through their final moments, and regular people who died and came back. Their stories will make you question everything you think about death. By the end of this video, you'll understand why ancient Egyptians spent so much time preparing for death, what scientists are discovering about the dying process, and why so many people who've been brought back to life say the same things about what they saw. Let's start by going back 4,000 years to ancient Egypt, where they wrote detailed guides about what happens when we die. Their descriptions match modern near-death experiences in ways that can't be just coincidence. And that's just the beginning of what we've found. Throughout history, many cultures created guides to help people face death. These old texts show us that people have always tried to make sense of what happens when we die. The Egyptian Book of the Dead stands as one of the oldest and most detailed death guides. The Egyptians wrote it over 3,500 years ago on papyrus scrolls. They placed these scrolls in tombs next to the dead. The book wasn't really a book, it was more like a map. It told the dead person's soul how to pass through dangers in the afterlife and reach a peaceful place called the Field of Reeds. In Tibet, monks wrote another famous death guide called the Bardo Thodol, which many people know as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Written in the 8th century, this text describes what happens in the 49 days after death. It explains how the dying person can reach a good rebirth, or even break free from the cycle of birth and death. The Greeks had their own ways to help the dead. They put coins on the eyes or in the mouths of dead people. This money was meant to pay Charon, the ferryman who carried souls across the river Styx to the afterlife. Without this payment, they believed the soul would be stuck wandering the shores forever. Native American tribes passed down oral traditions about death through many generations. The Hopi people believed in a spirit path marked by cloud formations that led to the afterlife. The Lakota spoke of a difficult road to the spirit world, where only those who lived good lives could pass. In ancient China, people wrote death guides on pieces of jade and buried them with the dead. These jade books told the soul how to find its way through the courts of the afterlife and avoid punishment. Chinese families still burn paper money and items during funerals, thinking these things will help their loved ones in the next world. The Norse people had no written death guide, but their stories told of different afterlife places. Warriors who died in battle went to Valhalla. Others went to Helheim, a cold underground place ruled by the goddess Hel. The Norse buried their dead with supplies and weapons for their journey. The Aztecs believed in several afterlife places. Where you went depended on how you died, not how you lived. Warriors who died in battle went to the sun god's paradise. People who died from drowning or lightning went to Tlalocan, a place of endless springtime. They prepared the dead with special objects for their specific afterlife journey. In ancient Persia, the Zoroastrians wrote the Vendidad, which included instructions for death. They believed the soul stayed near the body for 3 days after death. During this time, priests performed ceremonies to protect the soul from evil spirits and help it reach the Chinvat Bridge, where it would face judgment. Japanese Buddhists created death guides called Good Friends. These guides helped monks lead dying people through their final moments. The texts described signs of approaching death and gave advice about keeping a calm mind. The Maya carved death guides into temple walls and wrote them in books. They saw death as part of a cycle, like corn growing from seeds. Their guides described 9 levels of the underworld that souls had to pass through. These ancient death guides share common ideas. Most talk about a journey after death. Many mention judges or tests the dead must face. Almost all describe special places for good people and bad people. They show us that across time and place, humans created similar stories about death. Modern science can't prove these guides right or wrong, but they tell us something important about being human. They show how people tried to make death less scary by creating maps for the unknown. These old death guides still influence how many cultures think about death today. Looking at these ancient guides helps us see that worrying about death is normal. People have always wanted to know what happens next. These old texts tried to answer that question in ways that made sense to their cultures. The search for proof of life after death has caught the attention of scientists and researchers worldwide. Many studies now back up what ancient texts told us about death and what happens next. Dr. Sam Parnia leads research at New York University, studying what happens in our brains during and after death. His team found that brain activity continues for several minutes after the heart stops beating. They recorded cases where people could describe events that happened around them while they were clinically dead. At the University of Virginia, Dr. Jim Tucker has spent decades studying children who claim to recall past lives. His research includes over 2,500 cases of young children sharing detailed memories of previous lives. Many of these memories were later proven true through careful fact-checking. The Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab ran tests for 28 years on consciousness and its effects on physical reality. Their results suggest that human consciousness can influence matter in small but measurable ways, supporting the idea that consciousness might exist separately from the brain. Near-death experiences offer more evidence. Dr. Bruce Grayson from the University of Virginia collected thousands of cases where people who were declared dead described similar experiences. They talked about moving through darkness, seeing bright lights, and meeting deceased relatives. These stories match what the ancient death guides described. Studies of identical twins suggest that consciousness might be more complex than we thought. Research shows that twins often know when something happens to their sibling, even when they're far apart. This hints at connections between minds that we don't fully grasp yet. Quantum physics adds another layer to this research. Scientists like Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose proposed that consciousness might work through quantum processes in brain cells. This could explain how consciousness continues after physical death. Dr. Peter Fenwick's research on end-of-life experiences shows patterns that match ancient descriptions. He found that dying people often report seeing deceased relatives or spiritual figures, just as ancient guides predicted. These experiences happen across cultures and beliefs. Recent studies using EEG machines have picked up unusual brain patterns in dying patients. These patterns look similar to those seen during deep meditation, supporting the idea that death might be a shift in consciousness rather than its end. The evidence keeps growing. Each new study adds pieces to the puzzle, showing connections between modern science and ancient wisdom about death. As technology improves, we're finding more ways to test and measure what happens when we die. The results often support what people have believed for thousands of years. These findings don't prove everything in the ancient guides, but they show that those writers understood things about death that we're just starting to confirm with science. The research continues, and new tools help us see more clearly what happens in those critical moments between life and death. The concept of the three bardos comes from Tibetan teachings about what happens between life and death. These states of existence help us see how our mind and awareness continue after physical death. The first bardo starts at the moment of death. In this stage, a clear white light appears, the purest form of our mind. Many people who had near-death experiences describe seeing this intense light. During this time, which lasts about 3 days, we have our best chance to break free from the cycle of rebirth. But most people miss this opportunity because they don't recognize the light for what it is. The second bardo brings intense visions and experiences. Think of it like a vivid dream where we meet both peaceful and frightening figures. These aren't external beings. They're projections of our own mind. The things we see reflect our thoughts and actions from life. Someone who lived with kindness might see loving figures, while someone who lived in anger might face scary ones. This stage can feel very real, but knowing these visions come from our own mind helps us stay calm. The third bardo leads to rebirth. Here, we start looking for a new life. Our past actions and mental habits pull us towards certain situations. It's like being caught in a strong wind. We get swept along based on the patterns we created while alive. This is why Tibetan teachers stress the importance of how we live now. Our current choices shape our future experiences. These teachings match what many people report from near-death experiences. They talk about moving through tunnels of light, meeting beings, and reviewing their lives, similar to what the bardos describe. Modern brain research shows our minds stay active for a while after clinical death, which might explain some of these experiences. The bardos don't just apply to death. We go through mini-bardos all the time. The space between falling asleep and dreaming is a kind of bardo. So is that moment between thoughts, or the pause between breathing out and breathing in. Learning about these transitions helps us prepare for the big transition of death. But we don't need to accept these ideas completely. Think of them as a map, showing possible experiences after death. Just like having a map of a new city makes us feel more confident, knowing about the bardos can make us less afraid of dying. These teachings suggest death isn't an end, but a transition. The bardos teach us something practical too, the importance of staying aware. If we practice being present and calm during small transitions in life, we'll be better prepared for the bigger ones. This is why meditation can be helpful. It trains us to stay steady when things change. These teachings also connect with what we learned about scientific research on consciousness. Scientists found that awareness doesn't just shut off when the body dies. Instead, it changes and continues in new ways. The Bardo teachings described this process thousands of years ago. The three Bardos show us that death happens in stages. It's not like switching off a light, it's more like a sunset, with gradual changes as one state flows into another. This matches what doctors see when studying dying patients. The body and mind don't all stop at once. Looking at death this way can change how we live. If we know our thoughts and actions create our experience in the Bardos, we might choose to live more mindfully. The Bardos teach us that death isn't something that happens to us once. We're practicing for it in small ways every day. These teachings don't conflict with other beliefs about what happens after death. They describe experiences that many cultures have noticed in different ways. Whether you see them as literal truth or helpful metaphors, they offer a way to think about death that reduces fear and increases peace. The Bardo teachings suggest we can prepare for death. By getting familiar with how our mind works during transitions, we build skills that help us face bigger changes. This connects with both ancient wisdom and modern science, showing us that consciousness is more flexible and continuing than we might think. The ancient Egyptians saw death as a passage to another life, not an end. They built their culture around preparing for this final trip, which they believed would be filled with tests and challenges. When someone died, their soul split into two parts, the Ba and the Ka. The Ba could move around freely and looked like a bird with a human head. The Ka stayed close to the body and needed food and drinks, which is why families left offerings at tombs. The dead person had to go through the Duat, a dangerous place full of monsters and traps. They weren't alone though. The god Anubis, with his jackal head, helped guide them through these dangers. This is why Egyptians buried their dead with special books called the Book of the Dead. These weren't really books like we have today, but scrolls with spells and instructions to help the soul stay safe. After making it through the Duat, the soul reached the Hall of Mayat. Here came the most important test, the weighing of the heart. The god Anubis would put the person's heart on one side of a giant scale. On the other side sat a feather belonging to Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was heavier than the feather, it meant the person had done bad things in life. A monster called Amit would eat their heart, and they would stop existing forever. But if the heart was as light as the feather, they could move on to the field of reeds. The field of reeds was the Egyptian version of paradise. They thought it looked just like Egypt, but perfect. The sun always shone, the crops always grew, and no one ever got sick or tired. The dead person would meet their family members who died before them and live there forever. But getting to paradise wasn't easy. The Egyptians had to prepare their whole lives for this trip. They built huge tombs and filled them with everything they thought they'd need in the afterlife. Furniture, food, clothes, and even tiny servant statues called Ushapti. These statues would come to life in the field of reeds and do all the work, so the dead person could relax. They also had to keep their body safe. That's why they made mummies. They believed the Ka needed to find the body or the person couldn't reach the afterlife. Making a mummy took about 70 days. First, they removed all the organs except the heart and dried them in special jars called canopic jars. Then they dried out the body with salt and wrapped it in long strips of linen cloth. They put special jewelry and amulets between the wrappings to protect the dead person. Rich people, like pharaohs, had the best chances of making it to the field of reeds. They could pay for the best tombs, the most expensive mummy wrappings, and lots of protective spells. But even poor people tried to save up for at least some funeral supplies. Everyone wanted a shot at eternal life. The Egyptians wrote their spells and prayers on tomb walls too. These weren't just decorations. They thought the pictures and words would become real in the afterlife. If they painted a picture of bread, that bread would appear for the dead person to eat. If they wrote down the name of a god who could help them, that god would show up when needed. This belief in the afterlife affected everything in ancient Egypt. They built their biggest buildings as tombs. They spent huge amounts of time and money preparing for death. Even their art and writing focused on what would happen after they died. But they didn't think this was scary or sad. To them, death was just moving to a new place, like moving to a new house. They spent their lives getting ready to move into their eternal home. The Egyptian afterlife shows us how differently people can think about death. While we often try not to think about it, the Egyptians made it the center of their culture. They turned the scary idea of dying into a hopeful story about living forever in a perfect world. All they had to do was prepare properly and live a good life, and they believed they'd get their reward in the field of reeds. The ancient Egyptians showed us a path through death, but their wisdom points to something even more fascinating: the ability to transform reality itself while we're alive. Their beliefs weren't just about what happens after death, but about the raw creative force that exists in every moment. Think of reality like water. It can be solid as ice, flowing as liquid, or formless as steam. Our thoughts and focus act like temperature, changing the state of what we experience. The Egyptians knew this when they built their temples and wrote their spells. They weren't just preparing for death, they were actively shaping their living world. This brings us to a simple but powerful truth. We create our reality through where we put our attention. When we focus on problems, we see more problems. When we focus on solutions, solutions appear. The Egyptians expressed this through their gods and rituals, but we can use it in our daily lives without any supernatural elements. Let's break this down with a clear example. Picture yourself in a crowded street. If you're thinking about danger, you'll notice every suspicious person, every dark alley, every potential threat. But shift your focus to finding friendly faces, and suddenly you'll spot people smiling, helping others, sharing moments of kindness. Same street, completely different reality. This isn't positive thinking, it's about understanding how our brains filter information. We receive millions of pieces of data every second, but we can only process a tiny fraction. What decides which pieces get through? Our beliefs and expectations. The Egyptians understood this when they created their elaborate belief systems. But here's where it gets practical. Want to change your reality? Start with your morning routine. Instead of checking your phone first thing and filling your mind with others' realities, take 5 minutes to picture your ideal day. The Egyptians would begin their days with prayers and rituals. We can do something similar by setting our mental filters for what we want to experience. Your words shape your reality too. The Egyptians believed names held power, and modern psychology agrees. When you catch yourself saying, "I can't," or "this always happens to me," you're programming your reality filters. Change those phrases to "I'm learning to," or "I'm looking for better ways," and watch how different opportunities become visible. This isn't magic. It's about training your brain to spot what serves you. Think of it like tuning a radio. There are countless stations playing at once, but you only hear the frequency you're tuned to. The Egyptians used symbols and ceremonies to tune their consciousness. We can use simpler tools, gratitude lists, visualization, or even just conscious breathing. The most powerful reality-shaping tool is questions. The questions you ask determine the answers you find. Ask, "Why does this always happen to me?" And your brain will find reasons for your bad luck. Ask, "What can I learn from this?" And you'll find lessons and opportunities. The Egyptians asked big questions about life and death. We can ask questions that open new possibilities in our daily lives. Here's a practical exercise. Pick one area of your life you'd like to change. For the next week, write down 3 things each evening that support your new reality. If you want better relationships, note every positive interaction. no matter how small. If you want more abundance, record every unexpected gift or resource that comes your way. You're training your brain to tune into a different frequency. This isn't about denying problems or pretending everything is perfect. The Egyptians faced plenty of challenges, from floods to famines. But they created systems to transform their relationship with these challenges. We can do the same. When problems arise, ask, how can I use this? What reality am I creating by how I respond to this? Your physical space affects your reality too. The Egyptians built temples and monuments that reflected their desired reality. You can do this at home. Clear your space of objects that remind you of what you want to leave behind. Add elements that represent your desired reality. Even small changes send powerful messages to your brain about what's possible. The key is consistency. The Egyptians didn't just perform their rituals occasionally. They built their entire culture around their reality-shaping practices. Pick one small change and stick with it for 30 days. Maybe it's starting each day with 3 deep breaths and setting an intention. Maybe it's ending each day by writing down one thing you created or attracted. This is how reality transformation works. Not through grand gestures, but through steady, consistent shifts in how we filter and interact with our world. The Egyptians left us a blueprint, hidden in their myths and monuments. Now it's up to us to apply these principles in ways that fit our modern lives. Science and spirituality have long been seen as opposites, but research now shows they might be telling us the same story from different angles. Scientists studying consciousness and quantum physics are finding results that match what ancient spiritual teachers described thousands of years ago. Take near-death experiences. Doctors used to dismiss them as hallucinations from a dying brain. But research shows people can accurately describe events that happened while they were clinically dead, even reporting conversations and details from other rooms. These experiences share common elements across cultures: a feeling of peace, seeing a bright light, meeting deceased loved ones, and reviewing one's life. Brain scans of deep meditators reveal fascinating patterns. People who spend years in meditation show changes in areas linked to attention, emotion control, and self-awareness. Their brains actually process information differently. This lines up with old texts describing how regular meditation practice changes perception and experience. Quantum physics keeps revealing an odd truth. The act of observing something changes it. Particles exist in multiple states until measured. This mirrors ancient teachings that say consciousness shapes reality, and that the observer and the observed are connected. Studies on prayer and healing have produced results that standard science struggles to explain. When people pray for sick patients without their knowledge, some studies show better recovery rates. While controversial, these findings suggest consciousness might affect physical reality in ways we don't yet grasp. DNA research shows trauma can be passed down through generations, affecting how genes work without changing their basic structure. This matches old wisdom about family patterns and karma continuing through bloodlines. Both science and spirituality point to deep connections between past and present. Time itself gets strange at the quantum level. Particles can influence each other instantly, across any distance, and cause can follow effect. This lines up with spiritual teachings that time is more flexible than we think, and that everything is connected in ways our normal experience doesn't show. Scientists studying psychedelics find these substances can create profound spiritual experiences and lasting positive changes. Brain scans during psychedelic sessions show reduced activity in areas that maintain our usual sense of self. This matches descriptions from spiritual traditions about transcending the ego to access deeper truth. The placebo effect keeps getting stronger and more puzzling. People can get better just by believing they're getting medicine, even when they know it's a placebo. This suggests belief and expectation shape physical reality more than we realized. something spiritual teachers have long claimed. New physics theories propose consciousness might be fundamental to the universe, not just created by brains. Some scientists suggest consciousness could be like space and time, a basic feature of reality. This matches spiritual views that consciousness is primary and matter secondary. Research on death shows brain activity can continue for minutes after the heart stops. Some people report clear thoughts and perceptions during this time. This raises questions about consciousness surviving physical death, a core spiritual teaching across cultures. Studies of identical twins separated at birth show they often lead remarkably similar lives, making the same choices despite different upbringings. This suggests deeper patterns shaping our lives, similar to spiritual concepts of destiny and soul plans. Memory research reveals how unreliable our memories are. We constantly edit and reconstruct them. This fits spiritual teachings that our stories about the past are creative acts, not fixed records, and that healing can come from changing how we hold our memories. The science of habit formation shows how thoughts and behaviors create physical brain changes. This process mirrors spiritual teachings about karma, how patterns of thought and action shape future experiences. Modern physics describes multiple dimensions beyond the ones we can see. This matches spiritual descriptions of other realms of existence overlapping our physical world. Both suggest reality is bigger than our normal perception shows. Brain research reveals we make decisions seconds before becoming consciously aware of them. This challenges our usual sense of free will and self, linking to spiritual teachings about the constructed nature of ego and choice. Studies of group meditation show effects spreading beyond the meditators, reducing crime and conflict in surrounding areas. This supports spiritual claims about consciousness affecting collective reality. Science keeps finding evidence that everything is deeply connected, from quantum entanglement to ecosystem relationships to social networks. This matches the core spiritual teaching that separation is an illusion, and we are all part of one interconnected whole. These overlaps between science and spirituality suggest both approaches might be uncovering the same underlying truth. As science advances, it might be catching up to what spiritual wisdom has been saying all along, that consciousness, connection, and meaning are built into the fabric of reality itself. Life gives us choices at every moment. These choices shape who we become and create our path forward. Each decision, big or small, adds up to form our unique story. Many people feel stuck in their lives, believing they have no real options. But this is rarely true. Even in difficult situations, we can choose how to respond, what meaning to give events, and which direction to take next. The key is seeing these choices clearly. Think about your daily routine. You might wake up at the same time, eat the same breakfast, and follow the same path to work. But each of these actions started as a choice that became a habit. You can make new choices anytime. Some choices feel scary because they push us out of our comfort zone. Changing careers, ending relationships, or moving to a new place can bring up fear. This fear often keeps us in situations that no longer serve us. But facing these fears and making tough choices helps us grow. Our choices affect more than just ourselves. They ripple out to touch our families, friends, and communities. When we choose kindness over anger or growth over comfort, we create positive changes around us. Science shows that having a sense of control over our lives improves mental and physical health. Making conscious choices, rather than living on autopilot, helps us feel more alive and engaged. This matches what ancient wisdom traditions teach about free will and personal responsibility. But what about circumstances we can't control? Natural disasters, other people's actions, or global events might seem to limit our choices. Yet even then, we can choose our response. We can choose hope over despair, action over helplessness. Modern research in psychology and neuroscience reveals how our brains process decisions. Each choice creates neural pathways that make similar choices easier in the future. This means we can train ourselves to make better decisions through practice. Liberation comes from recognizing our power to choose. Many people feel trapped by their past, their circumstances, or their habits. But awareness of our choices opens new possibilities. Each moment offers a fresh start. Some traditions teach that true freedom lies in accepting what we can't change while taking action where we can. This balance helps us avoid both passive resignation and frustrated struggle against unchangeable reality. Making good choices requires clear thinking. Strong emotions, stress or pressure from others can cloud our judgment. Taking time to pause, reflect, and consider options leads to better decisions. Simple practices like deep breathing or writing down pros and cons help create this mental space. Our values guide our choices. When we know what matters most to us, decisions become clearer. Money, relationships, health, creativity, learning. Different people prioritize different things. There's no universal right answer, only what fits your authentic path. Small choices build momentum for bigger changes. Starting with tiny steps makes transformation more manageable. Want to change careers? Start by reading one article about your new field. Want to improve health? Choose one vegetable to add to dinner. Choice and liberation connect closely. Each choice that aligns with our true selves brings more freedom. This creates an upward spiral. Better choices lead to more options, which enable even better choices. Some people worry about making wrong choices, but often indecision causes more problems than imperfect decisions. Taking action, learning from results, and adjusting course works better than waiting for perfect certainty. Modern life offers more choices than ever before. Career options, living arrangements, lifestyle possibilities, the range can feel overwhelming. Breaking big decisions into smaller steps makes them more manageable. Your past choices brought you to this moment, but they don't control your future. Each new choice is a chance to change direction. This simple truth holds great power for personal growth and positive change. The ability to choose gives life meaning. Rather than being passive observers, we actively create our experience through countless daily decisions. This creative power brings both responsibility and opportunity. Choice leads to change, and change often brings uncertainty. But staying stuck in familiar patterns just because they feel safe limits our potential. Growth requires stepping into the unknown sometimes. Today's choices shape tomorrow's reality. By making conscious decisions aligned with our deepest values, we create a life that reflects who we truly are. This authentic expression brings natural liberation. Living with this knowledge changes everything about how we act each day. Let's look at real ways to put these ideas into practice. Start by paying attention to your daily choices. Notice how many times you react without thinking versus making clear decisions. These small moments add up, from what you eat for breakfast to how you speak to others. Take 5 minutes every morning to set your focus. Ask yourself what matters most to you. This isn't about making big plans, but about being clear on your values. When you know what's important, decisions become simpler. Your actions create ripples. Think about how treating someone with kindness might affect their whole day, or how taking care of your health now shapes your future. Every choice builds on the last one. Stop blaming outside forces for your situation. Yes, life throws challenges at us, but we choose how to face them. Instead of saying, "I have to" or "I can't," try saying, "I choose to" or "I don't want to." This small shift in words shows you where your power really is. Look at your habits. Which ones help you grow? Which ones hold you back? Change doesn't need to be big. Start with 5 minutes of something better. Maybe it's reading instead of scrolling on your phone, or taking a short walk instead of another coffee. Pay attention to fear. Notice when it stops you from living fully. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. These are normal, but they shouldn't control you. Take small steps outside your comfort zone daily. Build stronger connections with others. Share your real thoughts and feelings. Listen deeply when others speak. Ask questions that matter. Show up for people when they need support. These connections give life meaning. Take care of your body. It's the only one you have for this life. Eat food that makes you feel good. Move in ways that bring you joy. Rest when you need to. Your physical health affects everything else. Learn something new often. Read books that challenge your thinking. Talk to people who see things differently. Try new experiences. Growth happens when we push past what we know. Face problems directly. Running away only makes them bigger. Break big challenges into smaller steps. Ask for help when you need it. Every problem solved makes you stronger. Give back to others. Use your skills to help someone else. Share what you've learned. Volunteer your time. Making life better for others makes your own life richer. Look at money differently. See it as a tool, not a goal. Use it to create the life you want, not to impress others. Save some for later, but don't forget to live now. Make peace with the past. You can't change what happened, but you can choose how it affects you now. Learn from mistakes. Forgive yourself and others. Focus on what you can do today. Think about your legacy, not just what you'll leave behind, but how you live right now. Your actions tell your story. Make it one worth telling. Practice gratitude daily. Notice good things, big and small. Thank the people who help you. Appreciate what works well in your life. This builds resilience for harder times. Set boundaries with respect. Say no to things that drain you. Make time for what matters most. Protect your energy and space. Live with less judgment of yourself and others. Everyone's fighting their own battles. Choose compassion over criticism. Take responsibility for your emotions. Other people don't make you feel anything. You choose your reactions. Learn to pause before responding. Create quiet time daily. Turn off notifications. Sit in silence. Let your mind rest. Solutions often come in these calm moments. Act with purpose. Don't just react to life. Create it. Choose your direction. Take steps that match your values. These practices might seem simple, but they change lives when used daily. Start with one that speaks to you. Add others as you grow stronger. Your choices shape everything. Choose well. Remember that change takes time. Be patient with yourself. Small steps forward still move you ahead. What matters is starting now and keeping going. Your life is happening right now. Not tomorrow, not someday. Today. Each moment brings a new choice. Make ones that bring you peace, growth, and joy. Life and death touch every one of us. Through this discussion, we've looked at what science tells us, what different beliefs say, and how we can use this knowledge to live better lives right now. But knowing these things isn't enough. We need to act on them. Start today by taking small steps. Talk with your loved ones about what matters most to you. Write down your thoughts about life's big questions. Make time to explore your own beliefs about what happens after death. Don't wait for the right moment to start these conversations. They might feel uncomfortable at first, but they bring us closer together and help us appreciate the time we have. Take what you've learned here and share it with others. Your experiences and thoughts can help someone else who's trying to make sense of these topics. Join online groups or local communities where people discuss life, death, and what might come after. Be open to changing your views as you learn more. No one has all the answers, and that's okay. What matters is staying curious and respectful of different perspectives. Make the most of your time here. Call that friend you've been meaning to reach out to. Start that project you've been putting off. Tell people what they mean to you. These actions matter more than any theory about the afterlife. Look for ways to leave positive marks on the world, big or small. Plant a tree. Help a neighbor. Teach someone a skill. Write down your family stories. These ripples continue long after we're gone. Set aside time regularly to think about what gives your life meaning. It doesn't need to be long. Even 5 minutes of quiet reflection can make a difference. Create something that represents your thoughts about life and death. It could be a letter, a piece of art, or a simple journal entry. Making something helps us process these big ideas. Build connections with people who support your growth. Find mentors who've walked similar paths. Be a mentor to others who are just starting to ask these questions. Take care of your physical and mental health. A clear mind helps us face life's challenges and think about deeper questions. Exercise, eat well, get enough sleep, and make time for activities that bring you joy. Start a tradition that helps you mark life's passages. Light a candle on special days. Visit meaningful places. Create rituals that give structure to how you think about life and death. Keep learning from different sources. Read books from various cultures. Listen to people whose beliefs differ from yours. Watch documentaries about how others approach these topics. Put your affairs in order, not from fear, but from care for those you love. Make your wishes known. Organize important documents. Leave notes for your family about things that matter to you. Focus on building a legacy of kindness and wisdom. Small acts of goodness add up over time. Help others when you can. Share what you know. Listen when others need to talk. Take action now. Don't let these ideas just sit in your mind. Pick one thing you can do today to live more fully or prepare more thoughtfully for whatever comes next. Stay connected to nature. Spend time outdoors. Watch the seasons change. Let the natural cycle of life remind you that change is normal and necessary. Make peace with uncertainty. We don't need perfect answers to live good lives. Focus on what you can do with the time you have. Start today. Pick something from what you've learned and put it into practice. Share your thoughts with someone close to you. Begin a project that adds meaning to your life. The time to act is now. Use what you've learned to live more fully, love more deeply, and face the future with courage and hope. Your life matters. Your choices matter. Your actions matter. Start making positive changes today, no matter how small they might seem. Take the first step now. Whether it's writing down your thoughts, calling a loved one, or making a plan for your future, begin today. The best time to start living more meaningfully is right now. Ask yourself this: can you afford to go another day without knowing the truth? The journey your soul takes isn't just fascinating, it's life-changing. I love creating these videos for you. Sharing these secrets feels like my purpose. So if you find value in what we explore here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications to stay connected. And if you're ready to go even deeper, join our free newsletter. It's my way of sharing exclusive insights and guides directly with you, because this journey is too important to keep to myself. Let's uncover the truth together.